Hi, I'm Mike Steven, and this is Gear Up. Today, we're going to talk about snowboard boots. Snowboard boots are not the funnest thing in the world to buy because it's all about fit. It's about getting the right fit to your foot. So if your friend has a boot that works for them, that's great, but it might not work for you. So we're going to talk about a few of the things that can help you select the right boot for your foot. So first, you should know a little bit about your foot. You should know whether you have a wider forefoot or a narrower forefoot, a wide heel, narrow heel, because there are different boots that fit differently. Aside from that, the liners are heat moldable or custom moldable. So we're actually able to bake the liners in an oven in some situations, and in other situations, they just go on heat stacks and it blows enough hot air into the liner to actually cause the liner to custom mold and heat. So we're going to get into the boots right here. I'm going to pull this boot apart so you can kind of see the different layers of the boot and what you're going to maybe pay more for in a boot, and places maybe you can save some money in a boot. So you've got the exterior shell of the boot. The exterior shell of the boot is going to be your support. It's going to be the backbone of the boot. So up the spine of the boot is where you usually get your stiffness in the boot. So heavier, stronger, more powerful riders like stiffer boots. A little bit more like playful, jibby, freestyle riders might like a little softer boot, even if they're big, just to be able to tweak those tricks out and get a little bit more ankle mobility out of the boot. So you've kind of got beginners to intermediates are probably going to want softer boots. Intermediates to experts are probably going to want your stiffer boots, with that little add-on of if you are kind of a freestyle jibby person, you might go a little bit softer in the boot. Another thing to consider on a boot is the sole. So not just for walking around the mountain, because obviously most boots have pretty good grip for walking around the mountain, up and down stairs, all that kind of stuff. This boot actually has a Vibram sole on it, and what's really fantastic about that is if you're riding sleds or snowmobiles, it gives you the ability to for the boot to stand up on the snowmobile rails, because the EVA blown soles, which are the really light boots, man, they just don't stand up to those tracks, the rails on the snowmobiles, and you'll really chew through them. So think about what you're going to be doing with your boot, and that'll save you some money, because if you buy a really nice high-end EVA and you go backcountry boarding with your buddy on his snowmobile, you're probably going to find that you're going to chew through your sole pretty quickly. So we've gone over sole, we've gone over the stiffness of the boot. Another thing is how the boot laces up. Everybody's doing different systems these days on how fast you can lace the boot up and how convenient you can lace the boot up. You probably won't find very many systems that are just straight up lace systems. So on the exterior of this boot, you've got two handles that you can see here. These two handles, one is for the lower zone of the boot and one is for the upper zone of the boot. You just pull them to tightness, pull them back into the cleats, and then stow the handle into the side of the boot. They're really fast, really efficient. The other thing that's kind of nice about them is you don't have to use your arm strength. So for somebody that gets other people to tie their boots because they're not quite strong enough, you can actually lock out your arm and use your leg to push into the boot to get you as tight as you need to be in them. People always ask, are these replaceable? Can you, if you break one, what happens then? They're just like a regular lace. You do have to get the specific style of lace, but they are replaceable. That's not a problem. Another really popular system is shown on this boot, and that's BOA. BOA is a really neat company that has basically gone right across the board, whether it be helmets, shoes, snowboard boots. They do tightening systems for almost anything that you can think of. How BOA usually works is you can pull the BOA out and it opens the system, so it's nice and easy and you can get into the boot. Once this has a self-recoiler, so as you push it back in, you can see the BOA is automatically tightening. Once you want to tighten it, you just take it and crank it down. The one thing to talk about both these systems, the secret to a good comfortable fit and a good comfortable foot in the boot is not over tightening the boot. You just need enough pressure from the liner to create full contact on your foot. So if this is kind of the boot, this is your foot, you just want to wrap your foot. Once you start crushing down on it, you're going to get rid of circulation, you're going to get rid of feeling in your foot, and you're going to have uncomfortable feet. So you're better off to start with your boots being a little too loose in the day and then slowly tightening them up bit by bit versus cranking them down like heck at the beginning of the day and then wondering why your feet are in agonizing pain. Just a note is that all the blood flow and all the so blood flow and your nerves run down the top of your foot. So again, that's right over where this is clamping down. So really, really be careful of really over tightening that, because your boot may be a perfect boot. You may be just tightening it too much. Next, we're going to get into the liner of the boot. So to get into the liner of the boot, we're going to have to pull this apart. So make sure these cleats are disengaged, open up the boot. And by the way, that's how you get out of the boot. It's really a fast system to get out of the boot. And liners are always fun to pull. But here is the liner. So on this boot, you can see that there's multiple layers of foam in this boot. This is called an imprint 4. So what it means is there's 4 different densities of foam in this liner. Softer, cushier ones next to your foot, and as you graduate out to the exterior of the boot, they get stiffer and stiffer and more performance orientated. Because a soft liner in a beginner boot will be all that soft material. It'll be a nice squishy cloud-like feel, but not as much performance. As you graduate into a nicer and nicer boot, you're going to get denser and denser foams that offer more and more performance. The denser foams also have more ability to heat mold. So they've got the ability to heat mold much more so than the soft, fluffy ones. If you look at this liner in particular, it's got an ability to kind of hold the tongue in place here. If you look at the back of the boot, that's designed to hold your heel in place, so it narrows up significantly in the heel cup to really grab a hold of that heel. And if you look at the inside of the boot, I don't know if we're going to get a good shot of this, but if you look at the very inside there, you can see right in here, those are things called J-bars. They're designed to grab a hold of your ankles. At this point, I want to talk about socks, because this is where socks becomes really important. If you wear a really thick sock, a lot of times people think they're going to have warm feet. I completely disagree with that theory. I recommend a thin sock, and then don't lace the boot up too tight. And the reason why is a thin sock will allow all those contours that I'm talking about in the boot to grab a hold of your foot. You pad up or wear a thick sock and put lots of sock around your ankle bones, all of a sudden your boot can't grab a hold of the things it's designed to hold on to. Then you compensate by over tightening the boot. So my recommendation is wearing a thinner sock. Something I like, the lightweight socks are no thicker than a mid-weight sock, but I prefer the lights for myself personally. And a nice thin sock, it's going to be merino or some sort of poly so that it wicks sweat off your feet. And I kid you not, socks are probably one of the biggest things that you can invest in to have comfortable feet in your boots. So not using a cotton sock, using something like merino wool, polys, stuff like that, something with a spandex content in it so it really wraps your foot and holds your foot well. Then the boot can get a hold of your foot and really give you good support. Then the shell can support that. And then we'll get into bindings at the very end of this and explain that there's a very important mating between your binding and your boot as well. So also inside of boots, some kind of housekeeping inside of boots is a lot of the higher end boots are treated with antimicrobials to keep down on the smell of the boots. It is a good idea to pull your liners out and dry them, or at least put them inverted over a vent in your house, or if you do have boot dryers are fantastic to keep good care of your boots and to also keep them smelling fairly fresh. So we've kind of gone over the liner, I think, in a fair bit of detail. And if you look at the inside of the shell, you've got another system in here designed to grab a hold of your foot and lock it down. This one I see people tightening really hard. It's the one that kind of holds the liner in place. Don't worry about tightening this system super hard. This one doesn't need to be cranked on really hard. This one, tighten it down to what you like, but don't over tighten it. So again, big stress on not over tightening your boots. Next, we'll talk about ladies' boots. So ladies' boots are a little bit different. It's not just color that makes them different. What you're going to notice in ladies' boots is there's going to be a lot of times pleating at the top here so that the calf can open up a little bit more. Ladies' calf muscle is usually located slightly lower on their leg, and a lot of times they have a slightly stronger calf than your average guy. So they just need to accommodate for that extra bit of calf there so that you can actually be comfortable and you won't get pinch on the back of your calf. So you can see the way that is allowed to flex with these big open gussets here. So that's one thing that makes a ladies' boot a little bit different. The other thing is in the forefoot. The forefoot of a ladies' boot will be slightly narrower. One thing to keep in mind when you're buying a boot is that the boot should fit snugly to start out with, because when you're buying a brand new boot, none of these memory foams have given or have shaped around your foot. So because they haven't shaped around your foot, they have to give to do that, which is going to give you extra room in the boot. So the boot should feel fairly snug right off the bat. If a customer doesn't say to me, hey Mike, I think these are a little bit small, usually I'm concerned that they might be in too big of a boot. They walk out the door happy as anything, but 10 days into riding, they realize that, oh man, my foot's swimming all over the place in this boot. So after break-in, you should have your toe just off the end of the liner. During break-in, it's fairly common to have your toe near the end of the liner, if not lightly grazing the end of the liner. So the other thing that you can do is what's called a shell test. And shell testing is a good way to size a boot. And for shell testing, you pull the liner out, you pop your foot into the shell, and you should have a certain amount of distance to accommodate for the liner. I always say shells tell the truth, liners lie. Liners pack out and they give you more room, whereas the shell, man, that thing's not going to move much. It's built to be super stable. So that's why I recommend a shell test on a boot. The next thing that we'll talk about is the mating between your boot and your binding. So we've talked about the foot to the liner to the shell. Now we'll talk about the shell to the binding. So bindings are also sized, and they're also trying to make these guys fit the boot as good as possible. If you look at this one has some neat characteristics. When you flip it open, I know it's a simple thing, but see the way that just hangs open? I don't know if you remember when you're usually trying to get into your binding, you're trying to get through it like this. This guy flips open like that. Super nice feature. It's such a small feature, but what they did is they put a hinge in here. And everybody always asks, is that hinge going to break? This piece of the binding is warranted for life. So they've done something really cool with this. It's the same amount of plastic there. They've compressed it. So it's the strongest point of this strap is right where it's bending. So it's an incredibly strong place. And what that does is gets the strap out of the way so you can just slide into the binding. Next up to bat, you'll see this rubber back here. They call that the heel hammock. The heel hammock is designed to grip the back of the boot. It's a soft rubber. It's also flexible to mold around the back of the boot, so it really gets a hold of the boot. Again, stopping that heel lift. When you wrap the binding around, if you look at this ladder, it's got teeth on this side of the ladder and on this side. So it's got teeth on both sides of the ladder, allowing you to snug down that ankle strap into perfect tightness. You're also able to center the ankle strap over top of your foot because you want it actually centered over top so it's grabbing in the right place. So this is a tool-free one. You can just unscrew this, move it to any of the holes here, and you're able to actually adjust your ankle strap even out on the mountain if you choose to. Next up to bat on this guy is a toe cap strap, so it's able to run right over your toe. So what I do usually is I do up my toe strap first because it pushes my heel into the back. This goes right over the toe of the boot. And as you snug that down, it pushes you back as well as holding you down. So it gives you a really nice, comfortable fit out of the boot and puts some of the stress or some of the pressure on the frame of the boot instead of over the top of your foot. Again, you're adjustable here to be able to center your toe cap. And again, on your higher end bindings, you're going to get double ladder straps, so you're going to get a lot more pull out of that. Next up to bat, how the binding attaches to the board. It's important to ask the sales representative how it attaches to the board because there are different ways to attach to a board. There's 3-hole configuration, 4-hole configuration, and then there's also channel. So you got to make sure that your bindings are compatible with your board. So just check with your sales representative and make sure that they know what they're talking about when they say that it is compatible. Along those lines, on the footbed of most bindings these days, you're going to get, especially in your higher end bindings, you're going to get B3 gel. B3 gel is a really cool type of gel, and what it does is it cushions. So if you land a jump a little bit short or you don't quite make transition on something, you're going to have a little bit of a cushier landing. The really unique thing about B3 gel is that B3 gel, no matter how cold it gets, it doesn't change its density. So it's immune to the cold. It's a really cool feature for those cold days when you do knuckle a jump or come up short on something. Next up to bat, you see this right here. This hinge right here allows for a little bit of float this way. Because when you're on the binding, actually having a little bit of side-to-side float, if you lean back, that'll bring your tip up and powder. If you lean forward when you're driving into a turn, it'll give you a little bit more edge hold and a little bit more edge grip. So this binding is actually chassied so that it can actually sway a little bit on the chassis and allow you to put the power where you want to put it. Again, as you move up and down in bindings in price, you're going to get more of these features or less of these features. This guy's a fairly high-end binding, so you're seeing most of the kind of high-end features. But your basic binding will still get you out there and get you out there having a lot of fun. So by no means can you use it as an excuse that your bindings aren't good enough, because you know what? Most bindings just create extra comfort as they move up. You know what? I think we've talked a fair bit about snowboard boots, snowboard bindings, how to kind of pick them out and how to be comfortable out there on the mountain. I hope you've learned something. Thanks for watching Gear Up. Hi, I'm Mike Steven, and this is Gear Up. Today we're going to talk about goggles, something near and dear to my heart. I find that if I can't see well when I'm out on the mountain, whether it be snowmobiling or skiing or snowboarding, if I can't see well, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm not going to see that flat road, I'm not going to see that dip in the terrain, and I'm going to crash. So goggles, for me, are a safety feature. We're going to talk a little bit about the lenses of goggles, some of the neat features that have come in goggles, and a little bit about goggle care, how to take care of your goggles, because they are an investment these days. First up, we're going to talk about this goggle. And this goggle, what I want to point out is the lens in it. Most of the frame of the goggles is just about fit, comfort, looks, all that kind of stuff. The lens is what you're looking through. The lens is what you want to be good quality. The lens is what you want to address the light conditions that you're out in. I used to use this lens a lot. It's called a high intensity blue lens. So with this lens, it really highlights flat light and shadowed areas. It really makes them pop so that you can see those dips in the terrain on a flat light day. The only problem with a lens like this is that when you do get a bright bluebird day, it's letting in an awful lot of light. So it's not working like a sunglass, or it's not reflecting back some of that light. So it's making you a little bit squinty. I found that this was always good for me, but it's kind of neat. There's a new technology out there called, this company's calling it Prism. But what it is in essence, they're playing with the light spectrum a little bit, allowing certain types of lights in and blocking other types of lights. So even though this lens is quite dark, it lets in just as much light as that lens. So it can cover a broader spectrum of conditions. So you can have that low light day and you're gonna see all the dips and the whoops in the terrain. You can also have that really high bright day and get that, that tinting down enough that it's actually not going to cause you to squint and make you uncomfortable. So again, they're playing with the light spectrum and what lights they're allowing into the lens. Pretty much everybody, any big company out there is doing that nowadays on their sunglasses or their goggles. We're going to go over just some fun stuff on this goggle. This goggle has what's called fast lens technology. So it's able to change lenses extremely quick. What a lot of people like to do is they like to have a dark lens like this for the bright days and then a lighter lens. So they'll have multiple lenses. Or if you crash, pack a lens full of snow, it's nice to be able to pop a new lens in. Well, this is how fast it can be done now. Oh, almost dropped it. That's as fast as it is done. This technology on this one is using magnets. They also have a magnetic buff that you can put on. So you basically just take that and it seals the goggle to your coat. so that you have no wind or anything getting in on those really cold, nasty, blowy days. So really kind of neat technology to be able to snap that up into place. The buff doesn't sit underneath your goggle lens so that you're not breathing on it. Moisture is being transported into the lens, keeps it all on the outside. And to be able to change out your lens nice and fast, doesn't get much faster than that. So that's fast lens technology. Most companies out there, again, are doing their own version of fast lens technology. That's just one of them. Next up to bat, we're going to talk about some care of your goggles. So you've crashed in the snow, you've packed your lenses full of snow because it was a really good crash. Do not take your lens and start pawing at it with a frozen lens with your gloves. Take your goggle off, put it inside your coat, take a few minutes, whether it be going up the chairlift or if you're in the backcountry sledding, take a few minutes just to let that lens heat up. Once the lens is heated up, it's just going to be water droplets on the lens. At that point, you can use something like this, a squeegee. So it just squeegees off the lens, and then you've got a little leather chamois on the back for polishing the lens and getting all the streaks off. That way your lens is back up to running perfectly. Or you can use the bag that it comes with. The bag that it comes with is a microfiber. It's designed not to leave lint and not to leave streaks and stuff like that. So it actually works quite well for cleaning the goggle. I find in terms of cleaning the goggle, the bag works really well. In terms of getting rid of streaks and water, it doesn't work as well. So again, putting it in the jacket and wiping it with this, I find a lot of times it doesn't absorb the water. That's why I like a squeegee and a chamois to clean it right up. Now, anti-fog. Anti-fog is something that a lot of different industries are using. So anti-fog is a coating that you put on the inside of the lens. You don't need to put it on the outside. Fog doesn't generate on the outside of a lens. It really only generates on the inside of a lens. So you can either use fog cloths like this that are already treated with the anti-fog, wipe it on the inside of the lens, you let it dry, and that absorbs water, moisture without fogging on the lens. It does have a limitation. It can only absorb so much. So there's only going to be, I find the biggest thing that causes you to fog up on your goggles is being overdressed. So you've got too much warmth. You're just not venting out enough and you're perspiring too much. And that's what creates fogging on the goggles. Whereas anti-fog can help. It won't eliminate it if you're dressed way too warm or if you're working way too hard and not have enough forward speed to kind of clear it out. And what I mean by forward speed is if you look at a lot of goggles, by moving down the mountain, you actually get airflow into the goggle. It circulates and starts getting rid of that warm air in the goggle. Most goggles are also vented a lot on the top and onto the bottoms. So goggle venting is actually quite important, and it's more important if you're that person that does work hard and does perspire. It will make a big difference for you. Lastly, there's little sprays that you can put. So instead of using a cloth, you can spray the inside of the lens, kind of wipe it down with a soft cloth, and then you just let the material dry on the lens. I like to do that the day before kind of idea. It only needs a few minutes to dry, but I usually try to, if I'm heading out skiing, remembered that my goggles were starting to fog, spray it on the night before, let it dry over a whole night, and then touch up the goggles. So, like I say, the biggest thing that you can do wrong is when you crash, scraping the goggle. The reason why is you're just going to scratch the lens. So again, dry that, put that goggle into a warm place like inside your jacket, let it melt, and wipe it off. That'll keep your goggles running smooth for many years to come. Thanks for watching Gear Up. I'm Mike Stephen. Have a great day.